I think you're right. I think the pink lights behind it, and these are just plant lights that I got.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying, like a couple lights like that would be good for above me or something, like a
Yeah,
strip light or something.
I think so. Behind you, like these aren't the ones you want though. We're gonna get the ones that you need. Like the ones that Steve, Derek, and Neil have. They have the right strip kind that look so good in the photo or in the videos.
Yeah,
All right,
I
so
got rid of my
we had.
lamp. Sure, go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, so yesterday, guys, I'm gonna go ahead and kick it off. While my wife and my daughter are getting their nails done, I wanted to go ahead and jump on live. I'm still sending links to everyone.
Yeah.
What did we talk about yesterday, dude? We had an insanely awesome day yesterday, off camera or offline.
Yeah,
Discord.
we were going over. I was a bit distracted, so I didn't really retain the whole thing. But we were going over the galley priests and the Enaree, which are a sect. I guess a sect is the right word. A sect of sizing in transgender priests who took on who took on female gender roles in the city and culture. Or was it the galley that took on the female gender roles? Maybe they both did. I can't remember, but I'm pretty sure the Enaree took on female gender roles, but they were assigned male at birth.
Yeah. So from what we were reading, guys, we had one episode, the last episode, on after doing a deeper dive into one of Dr. Hillman's books, just out of curiosity of a personal experience I had, it's psychedelic experience. Saw a feminine Jesus a long time ago, before I'd ever heard of, honestly, probably before even Myth Vision and Gnostic Informant. That all came a little later in my life, last couple years. And this was about 4 or 5 years ago. And I can't really explain it, but I thought something to the effect of, and hear me out. And I'm thinking, okay, well, let's say, because I didn't know a lot back then, and I still have so much to learn. This stuff doesn't end. People spend their whole lives studying this and still don't learn some of the shit we're talking about. They don't even get to it. It's just whatever journey they take figuring it out,
Yes, especially if you're specializing in a certain area, right? It's like a musician who specializes in jazz. They can't really play metal, or they can't really play classical.
Do you have any friends that are guys, but they act very womanly, and they might even be gay, longer hair, dance a lot, always happy. And whenever you meet them and talk to them, you always leave feeling better about yourself because they're always shitting positivity everywhere. I had a couple of friends like this.
Yeah, for sure. Some of my friends might even classify me as that person. But I don't have long hair anymore, but I'm certainly not gay.
Right. So
yeah.
I have a couple of people in my life that reminded me of the vision I had of Jesus the Christ.
Yeah.
And in my head, I guess I was doing research on the Greek Eleusinian stuff around the time I was reading The Immortality Key, which is with my friend Rick Dunn now, because he has yet to read it and he's on the journey. I have a lot of books loaned out that I'll probably never get back, and it's okay. That's the story of the traveling books. Once I read it, once I dissected it, once me and Marcel, Tiger Shark, and Chase, once we really see how off the azimuth the conclusions may be. And let me tell you, I have never been more relieved in my life to run across a book like this. Now, I know some of my friends out there who I take very seriously and their opinions very seriously are more into the Christian persuasion of the way that we see it nowadays. And I don't want to offend anyone. We have friends on the show whose grandparents dealt with colonization of Christian establishments, like Tiger Shark's great grandma. And there's these horror stories of white boys like me showing up and doing things. And it's, you know, my family's paid as much tribute to that as we can. With my dad having all these awesome books about Native Americans and stuff, I guess. So I want to maintain a position with everyone where the guys from the Hillman crew, with whoever that is, whether you're a big fan or just kind of a peek in to see what they're talking about, and people who don't like that and are much more into a conservative way of looking at the religion, which I don't think there's any harm in that now, because 21st century Christians who aren't in political power are very good people typically. They at least try to be, even though they're just sharing memes with Bible verses on it on Instagram, and maybe not even going to church, but the church they go to is like a rock show with some dude on steroids giving the sermon, and it's all different now. And they're not trying to be horrible people. I don't love it when they throw it in your face. I don't love it when they don't try to learn a little bit about it. And I'm going to be flawed in the way that I see how other people interpret stuff sometimes. And there's things that I used to believe that I don't believe. And there's topics in our research that it's almost like when you go to let's say a buffet and you get a big plate of food and you got this over here and this over here, and maybe they're not the same kind of tastes, so you want to try them separately. Some of these topics, like a she-male Jesus, for example, it's stuff we've talked about and made episodes on before. But after you chew on it for a while with the audience, you got to go on to other topics for a little bit. I hadn't thought about it for a while, and I hadn't entertained it much. Honestly, we were having a lot of Christians on the show. So we had gotten to a point where we were finally getting both sides to visit the channel. And now we want to bring on everybody who has been associated in and around. So like Ali Rowan, we want to bring her on. I love to hear her story in more detail. I've kind of been saving all my questions and stuff for when we finally get her on, which hopefully it'll happen soon. Thanks to Marcel, keep in contact, because with the baby coming, the new job and stuff, I've been really busy, and just getting the content together has been a little bit of a struggle for myself until we decided to flip through this the other day. And we came across a chapter I hadn't read back to front yet, if that makes sense. And we saw some pictures of John the Baptist suggesting a certain lifestyle choice, right? Now, just as a disclaimer to start, I am 100% friends with the LGBT community. I've done security for them, and it made me feel so good to make everybody there of every shape and size who's gone through any of these mental battles and struggles their whole life. And I know what that's like. I've been obese when I was younger, and I've gained weight as an adult. And when you're not happy with yourself, it can cause all kinds of things to happen up here that some people probably never have the chance to feel because they're too busy at life. They never were overweight. They never were questioning their identity the way that they were supposed to present it, I guess, the way that society wanted them to. And it can be really troublesome for people, you know. And look, I'm the guy who did security for freaking Trump and DeSantis and all these right-wing guys. And that's the group of people I've been working around for years. But I'm still going to tell you that there's people on that side of the house, such as Caitlyn Jenner, who ran for governor, who I've worked for once, that it's not as bad as you think over there on the other side. And I'm not a red dude. I'm very independent, libertarian, independent type of dude in the middle. There's things that I think you should be able to do. Nothing should be illegal, like people, like plants and stuff. Like walking it across a line shouldn't be like a punishable thing. You know what I mean? I don't know. And if you don't agree with it, it's okay. There's things that we are going to agree on. There's video games we both like to play. There's so much that we all have in common. 80% of us is fairly similar. It's that little 20% of other things that we're into on our journeys. Maybe you start out kind of liberal, then you go red, then you go neutral in the end, right? And that's probably the same for people that start out blue or start out the opposite and go the opposite, whatever. And so we've been entertaining this concept, which some Christians might not be the biggest fan of, but I would love to get some opinions from some Christians on the show. I don't want to ring out the 3 friends that I have that are Christians that come on. I don't want to overuse them and ask them all these impossible questions that they've never heard before, like the concept of, you know, Jesus potentially being a very feminine guy for reasons that we're going to get into. And if you're somebody that was relieved that witch doctor was turning away from the Babylon stuff, that's never been the case. He did a little like a picture of me or whatever with, I didn't see it, but everyone told me that like there was something with that. And I was like, great. Now I pissed them off. And all I think it was for was have a Gnostic informant on the show. I was like, what? He's like, you're being led down a back alley, I think somebody said, he said. And it's like, what? Well, you could come on the show too. I mean, what the hell? I mean, I had AI pictures of the two of us in the same thing just when you shared my stuff, you know. And we got Marcel over here, people out to get him. He says something a certain way on a channel, it gets cropped out and sent to him. And now there's like this people from that area have sort of not been the biggest fans of myself and I guess anything that's questioning or trying to look into something. But the thing that we were talking about yesterday we talked about the galley, and then there's the Enaree, right? And there was a couple of things that we shared, but let me go ahead and start getting all that pulled up and whatnot. So on my page, I just shared some stuff so that I could find it quick. And anyway, is anybody in the back room?
No.
Okay, cool. All right, so let's see. Go to. All right. So we had a couple of different things that we shared. Now, granted, there was one article that we read that covered a lot of different stuff with the Enaree and the galleys, or the galley. But at the end, then they went into alien stuff. All the stuff we've seen YouTubes of Palladians and Andromedans and stuff like that. And then that's when I was like, oh shit, what is this? But it's not like anything they were saying on the galley or the Enaree was wrong. It's just they're into that and apparently wanted to tie it into something with that. Which
yeah. Just looking for connections that they probably aren't actually there.
Right. Is it or not? All right, so we're gonna switch over to a screen. Share screen. How are eunuchs perceived in ancient Mediterranean world? All right, so is it showing, bro?
Yes, yeah.
All right, cool. All right, so I don't see a description right underneath this picture here, but this looks like some of those the same artwork and style as like the Alexander the Great mosaics and stuff. I don't really have anything to say about it. I really can't tell you what this is at first glance.
No, I don't think it's Jesus on a boat with his disciples. Not at all.
No, of course I want to think about that because of some of the boats.
There is like a new lady over there, and there's angels. Those things got wings, and it looks like they're calling out to the people in the boat.
I'm guessing there's a eunuch somewhere in this picture.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I'm trying to find the story in my brain. Is it there's a few trademark stories that we ran across trying to search different stuff, yesterday. And then obviously on the episode on eunuchs that we did when we dove into Matthew 19:12, that keeps getting brought back up when we use different search tools, like, in regards to finding anything about is there anything in the Bible that should suggest that he has the features of a eunuch? Because in the first couple of 100 years, all the clean shaven sort of Dionysian androgynous haircuts, if you will, there's sort of an artwork you sort of draw the face a certain way when you're trying to show that somebody was a eunuch in artwork. So when someone's clean shaven with, I'll just say, like smaller, pretty features, if that makes sense.
Yeah, effeminate.
Well proportioned. Right. That you can't draw makeup on a statue. So typically there's sort of this natural code for what people think is back then. The way that the faces looked were very similar from statue to statue. So you had to do something to show who people were. So Peter, because he was the oldest, you'll see a beard on him sometimes. But I mean, he's 19. So I mean, he could have had a beard, but they draw him like balding and stuff a lot of times, or they sculpt him balding and whatnot.
I gotta grab a drink. Just give me 1 second.
Go ahead, bro. And then so over here on the left, this is a eunuch as well. And from the description down below, they talk about the shaved face and the eunuchoid features. And I'm assuming that that means smaller, less masculine developed features. So the concept is, if you remove testicles before puberty, then they don't grow very large, and they, I don't know. There was the thing about your servants being submissive to a degree. You can control them, you know what I mean? Because they don't develop full masculine features, apparently. At least that's what these articles talk about. Then we have another one in the middle here. This is also supposedly a man dressed as a female. And so the reason why this is sort of caught me for a little bit is just because we all know about the Revelation story about the gold belt or breastplate, brassiere around the chest. And a lot of these sculptures and statues, you'll see these ornaments. I didn't know if maybe that was some sort of rendition of this returning Christ figure, returning as a female, but with a sort of armor-like take on these. They had these ornamental things, you know what I'm saying? So, you know, it doesn't really say it's armor. It says it's like a belt, like a sash of some kind, if you will. But that's a Greek word that I would need the Greek guys here to, you know. And they had some signature thing, you know, and I'm just being funny here. These two circles here, it just, in my opinion, considering that they removed their testicles, I believe that this symbol here is absolutely probably means you're nuts. And the fact that they're there lets you know what this is a picture of. And once you know that this is a eunuch dressed like this, now the person looking at this will now know that it's a galley or an Enaree. And as far as the other symbolism, I haven't done enough of a dive to tell you what the other symbols would be or whatever, but it doesn't really matter as we go through this. And then we have another picture here. Obviously, it's a little bit later in time. And it looks like something my brother would have drawn, like growing up, like being funny. So eunuchs in the ancient world have become something of a major topic of interest for me over the past few years. I'm reading the article. The perception of eunuchs in various cultures throughout history has varied drastically depending on the culture, the time period, and the kind of eunuch in question. In this post, I'll describe perception of eunuchs in the ancient Mediterranean world. In general, the ancient Mediterranean world, eunuchs were heavily socially marginalized. They were often in slave status, and because of their castration, were commonly seen as no longer men, but rather lesser, inferior creatures. Eunuchs, women, children were all sort of lumped together, if you will. Commonly seen as belonging to the same essential category, eunuchs were often seen as similar to women than to non-castrated men. In the highly misogynistic ancient world, this made them seen as inferior and in some cases outright disgusting and debased. Eunuchs in the ancient Near East. In the ancient Near East, young men who were being sold into slavery were often forcibly castrated. Right? So enslaved eunuchs were highly valued because they were incapable of fathering children, and they were commonly thought to lack sexual desire. They were seen as ideal for serving in royal and wealthy households because it was assumed that they would not have sexual relations with the wives. All right. So when you think of like the movie History of the World, and you have the eunuchs, and you have the one skinny guy and the three, and the girl comes out and she's belly dancing for him, and the first eunuch, no erection. Second eunuch, no erection. Third eunuch gets to the fourth guy. He's standing there all nice and calm, and all of a sudden one of the feathers comes up that they're holding their crotch. And so they were seen as ideal for serving the royal and the wealthy because of that. and or daughters in the king or wealthy person who owned them. In reality, as we'll see later, eunuchs do not always completely lack sexual desire, as there are many attested stories of eunuchs enjoying sexual activities. Okay. One problem I have with a castration ritual in the Garden of Gethsemane and also trying to extract a fluid from the Neoniscos. The problem is I don't see how someone's going to be able to do that when they've just chopped their nuts off. That's probably the last thing I'm going to be thinking of right after I do that. I understand it's still in the same general region, but I almost don't know how these fuckers even did that shit. Honestly, I couldn't imagine. Oh my God. How are you, bro? Anybody else here? Just us.
I don't see anyone. Oh, no, I don't see anyone.
Do you have Tiger Shark and Chase's like info or like an email or anything?
No.
All right, and then my phone just died, so
I haven't seen or heard from Tiger Shark in a few days now, and she's probably busy.
Okay, yeah. All right, cool. Let me go grab my phone real quick.
Okay, yeah. You go ahead. Oh yeah, so I guess it's just me here right now. I'm not sure where we left off, but that's not too big of a deal. I guess I will just ask how everyone's doing. How many people are here? We got 10 of us. I would read more of the article, but I can't exactly see it. My eyes are really bad. But that's okay. The Enaree do seem pretty neat, though. They, I wonder if Amon knows about them at all. I'm sure he does, but it would be neat if he mentioned them sometime. Hey, J Frog, how you doing? I hope.
My phone is still dead. I didn't plug it up earlier.
Oh yeah, okay. I was just fucking rambling about.
You're good.
Yeah, I was just basically saying. I wonder if Ahmed has talked about the Enaree before.
Well, see, that's the thing is, I don't know if he's ever said the name specifically, but he says Galley in the book, but he's saying that the Thracian Baptists were cross-dressing Galley type concept. So here's the concept, guys, and we're gonna read more of this, but let's just go ahead and get into the good shit for a second. So here's the challenge, okay? So the concept that guys who were atheists their whole life struggle with is the fact that if there was a guy doing miracles and stuff or whatever, and this is the cheap beginner's atheist argument, all right? I'm just reiterating it because I guess it's a preface for what I'm about to say. So it's if people were seeing this guy doing miracles and curing blindness and in this literal representation of miracles or whatever, Judaism itself at the heart in Jerusalem, where this was happening when it all went down, the earth splitting in two, and all the whole Passion of the Christ version of this was real, Judaism would not exist anymore because they would have seen the Messiah. There wouldn't have been the thing. Now, I know there's 1,000 things people could say with me saying that. That's just sort of a cheap joke to give this concept. All right. So if all over this region, people going to and fro, whatever, for 600 years, there have been castrated priests worshiping mother goddesses from whatever lineage of gods you're from, right? So if you're in, what's now Turkey and Syria, it was the Enaree. If you were over further up to the left, you were the Galley or whatever, and it was a different mother goddess, either Kybal, which we've been saying Sybil, just but we didn't realize it was a K before. So either Kybal, if I'm saying that wrong, Kybeli, I'm sure it's Kybal, and then starts with an A. I can't even think of the name right now, but so the question is, how feminine does Jesus act in this book that we have? You know, Mark and Matthew and Luke. Those are the only three that we're going to look at. All right. We're not worried about Paul's letters. We're not worried about anything Paul had to say. We're just looking at the earliest stuff that has survived to now, at least with what's available for us, without speaking the Greek and stuff. So it's like, okay, let's say in Jerusalem, at the heart of where Judaism was, all of the modern rules for the religion are the modern rules for the religion. All right. Let's say they're still burning incense, which are cannabis. Cool. Let's say they're still doing the hand washing rituals. Okay, cool. Let's say they're still doing not castration, circumcisions 8 days in of a boy's life. Okay, cool. The question is, the further away from Jerusalem you get, we've been arguing that the reason why we think the entheogens were part of the practices of Jesus and maybe perhaps John the Baptist as well is because of the surrounding cultural influence. And I guess I never really realized just how much the castrated priest thing and how big that really even was till we started diving into it again more directly, trying to disprove the chance of that being what was so madmanish about this freaking guy, why they wanted to actually kill this dude. I mean, to actually, if a guy showed up and did miracles and healed an ear and actually was doing what Messiah shit, you know, what we all been claiming he does, what they've been claiming he did, they wouldn't have killed the guy because it would have been the fucking Messiah. How stupid! What the fuck does that make any sense? If Superman showed up and did some amazing thing in front of me, we would not go get the cops and kill him. It's not what the fuck. So it just doesn't make any sense that they killed the guy because he wanted to live in the woods. Oh, and he was doing rituals. It's like, oh, cool. So like the local pagan rituals. Oh, no. He was doing water baptisms. They didn't like that. Like, what the fuck? Get the fuck out of here. That's the stupidest fucking thing I've ever heard in my life. And I don't want to be aggressive about it, but we've been being nice on the show. So it's, you know, for once supporting the Babylon, you know, sort of aspect for this, because we haven't really been doing that kind of thing lately. What's up, Tiger Shark?
What's up, guys?
Oh, sorry,
dude, we had an awesome episode last time.
That's my fault. Hey, Tiger Shark, how you doing, bro?
Not much. How are you guys?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. I mean, other than the fires here, but they haven't reached me yet. But they're pretty bad. They're pretty bad. It's certainly causing crazy conspiracy theories from the people around here. I'll tell you that. It's
to America now and say your life is in danger, and come down to Texas.
Oh, good.
Canada.
Yeah.
It's on fire. What are you talking about? So, Tiger Shark, bro, we have been. I told you a little bit in WhatsApp, and I hope Chase shows up because this is one of Chase's one of the things he first dove into. But what we're doing is we're trying to see how ridiculous of a concept it would be to think that this rebel rabbi from Galilee, and I'm not saying that Galilee and Galilee sound alike. Oh, it must have been the place where all the Galilee were. That's not what I'm saying, but it's just funny coincidence here. It's a different region, you know, whatever. But you know, hey, little China. I'm just joking. That's not how it got its name. But what I'm fighting with now is my brain is cannot let go of the fact that I saw this feminine Greek priestess kind of themed Jesus a long time ago when I didn't even think there ever was a living Jesus at all. And not that seeing it in a vision means it ever existed, obviously, but to see that at all and it be a female really threw me for a loop. Because of course I'm expecting to see some 33-year-old dude that looks like either some version of a guy from that area or something like that mixed with a painting I've seen a bazillion times of a white guy, you know, blue eyes and blonde hair. So the question is, if John the Baptist was killed for doing, for living in the wilderness and doing pagan rituals and stuff, blah, 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 how do we know that that didn't include a very common practice of the time, way more common than I was even thinking when I made the freaking video on it the first time. Much more common practice than we were thinking. The concept of John the Baptist and perhaps even Jesus doing that in their practice. If everybody from the surrounding area is doing pagan rituals, but there's just Jews in town, and they're doing these cultural norms, and they bring that to Jerusalem to liberate the Jews who aren't getting a chance to do this. I mean, wouldn't it make sense that, like, just speaking from how conservative, Judaism might kind of act today, that the whole concept that he was a feminine, castrating, galley type of cross-dressing priest sounds so crazy at first. But then you look at the sculptures, and there's this way that they draw eunuchs in paintings and sculptures where they have a clean face, an androgynous haircut that's not too short, not too long all the time, depending on the sculpture of the statue. And the clothing he's wearing is Jewish, but I'm trying to see if these artists, like drawing this magic wand, for example, they're alluding to the alabaster, I wonder if that clean face and the way that they draw him the first couple hundred years, if they are trying to, just like with the text, subtly hide truths, but have a Romanized, approved, politically correct, if you will, religious text with shit hidden underneath it, just like artists do, just like anyone in their trade kind of did back then. Is it crazy to think that this particular...
What happened?
Oh, we lost him. Is it crazy to think? I think he was going to say to have this particular version of Jesus.
Yes, yeah.
And I would say no. I would say no, because the therianthropic, so therianthropes that we see literally everywhere across the shamanic realm. So you have to look at it. So John 10:9, where Jesus himself claims that he's the door, and you have that guy, I forget his name. The guy that goes around with his son to all the university. He's a Christian. And he debates like college students and stuff. You know what, Cliff or whatever his name is. Cliff something.
I know the first name. I know who you're talking about. I just can't remember the name.
I know who you're talking about.
So that guy always goes, well, they're always talking of metaphors, and he's talking in metaphors. No, he's not. That saying of "I am the door, I am the way," that is shamanic practice 100%. And where the evidence is that it is literally Java, Turkey, Angkor Wat, Mesoamerica, the Zapotecs, the Mayans, the Incas, the Ethiopians, the Axiomites, the Sara in South Yemen, the Greek, the Chaldeans, the Scythians, the Etruscans, the mixed and blended cultures, which would be the Celtics. They all are shamanic, and that's what they all have. They all have false door altars everywhere. We find them in megalithic scenarios. So once you zoom out of the Greek, you start to see all of this shamanic at all these ancient sites that are older than all of this stuff in the Bible. There's a bunch of therianthropic stuff, which is basically people that are it's humanoids with lizard heads, with horse heads, with all in Egypt. There's this stuff. False windows. These were altars, and the doorway was a representation into the underworld. The Zapotec
nowhere. That's what you mean.
Well, into what they call heaven, but what other shamanic cults, high priests in other areas like Mesoamerica will call the underworld. So that they were offering not only food offerings, they're also burning incense on altars also in Mesoamerica. They're killing animals as sacraments. They're killing captive wartime captive people. And they were also doing psychedelics and entering trances. There's a whole city that has no right angles because the scholars hypothesized down there in Mesoamerica that that city was supposed to be a representation of the underworld, which is pretty badass. But they all had false door altars. And so when Jesus says, I am the door, he's basically saying, I am your way into heaven, and it has to come through me and my ritualistic practices, my drugs. And so when you start reading this through that lens and through that context with all the cup stuff, you don't have to read the ancient Greek like Amen says. I mean, I like Amen going through there, but they were doing crazy drugs. And Chase and I were talking about this. They were doing henbane, scopolamine mixed with the opium. They're also using it as a poison. That drug, that's a deliriant for one, scopolamine, and for two, an upper. But
and henbane
it also slows you down. That opium slows you down. That poppy, and you're not, unless you're doing like high doses, it slows you down. But they were doing that. So even if they were doing crazy stuff back then, it wasn't illegal, right? You could, if you were a high priest and you stripped naked and ran down the street, all your high priest buddies and shaman buddies would be like, hell yeah, dude, awesome. But if you do that today, you get arrested for public indecency, right?
Yeah.
It's the culture's completely gone.
But so you see all that, like Revelation. In Revelation, there's the part with the porneia that's literally in there. You don't have to read the ancient Greek for it. I can pull the verse up right now, and I'll get a couple other verses for you. But Revelation 17:4 says, "And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand, full of abominations and the filthiness of her fornication." That's porneia. And it goes on even in Revelation 18:6. What that?
There's no other way to really interpret. Like you can't there's only really one way to read that.
I mean, that's just, it's all cultic stuff. Revelation 18:6 goes on, reward her even as she rewarded you, and double unto her, double according to her works, in the cup which she hath filled, fill to her double. That's why the Gnostic groups were doing all that semen stuff and offering it up to the Lord and then eating it. That's where that came from. And that was written in the Roman accounts, by the way. We're not talking about the early church fathers. We're talking about the Roman accounts that have that in there. And then the drug wars are right here too. You have 1 Corinthians. So Paul in the church of the Corinthians, when Paul is addressing them, he tells them in 1 Corinthians 10:21, ye cannot drink the cup of the Lord and drink the cup of the devils. Ye cannot be partakers of the Lord's table and the table of the devils. This is the designer drug war, my friend. He's telling them, you have to decide, what drugs are you going to be a part of? Are you going to come with my cult? Or are you going to go with their cult? Right? The Greek cult that they were probably worshiping, because all those churches were Greek churches. They're a Greek polygod church that they took over later. The pre-Axiomite society in Ethiopia is a good example of that. And people probably haven't looked into this, but there's a temple, a couple temples there. And the Christians basically come and claim that we built these in 24 years and the angels built them at night. Yeah, that's a joke. Basically, they were older temples, really well designed, really good stonework in the ground, monolithic, right? The church came along and tried to mimic these things, and they look like dog shit. And it's not, the archaeologists know, they're like, that's not the original. The builder that built that, definitely not the person that built the original. There's an altar too in the temple of Yaha, I think Yaha, Yeha. And some scholars think that is the original Yahweh, actually. But if you look at the archaeology between that temple in northeast Ethiopia, it has a lot of Sara influence from the south of Yemen, because the temples are the same. It has inscription. Now, this is very interesting because their altar also has a bull head. And when they do a libation on it and sacrifice a bull, the blood will flow down and then it will be caught into a bowl. The inscription that's on there says, we rebuilt this temple. They never claimed to be the first. So I was looking at this going, well, did the Greek have influence in northern Ethiopia? And lo and behold, who's that guy? Who's Homer? Homer wrote about people going down there. Other people wrote about going down into Ethiopia. That Axiomite temple, by the way, one of the ones that the Christians claim they built, dude, Greek design. So my theory to Amen is this: I'll give Amen an olive branch. If those scholars are correct that Yaha is the same as Yahweh, coming from the Sara cult and those groups, although they had their own moon god, that was their original, but they're a poly. If that's true,
Right.
there's literally Greek ties to that. Now, it's not to say they're all Greek, but those temples are for sure architectonically Greek. We know that by the number of pillars, 36. That was a Greek thing. So if there is crosses there, and his claim is that Yahweh was an original Greek thing, and it might be that it was an original Greek / Ethiopian god, right, that they created.
Right.
That's what it is. That's where it came from. There's a different hypothesis, obviously. There's people that think it's Hittite and all that stuff in nature.
Francesca Stavrakopoulos, I think, talks about Yahweh coming from Mesopotamia and having a dad, El, and the whole I can't remember everybody's freaking name at this point, because if I'm going to talk about something really in any detail, I'll just pull it up anyway so that I don't misspeak, because I do all the time. But I thought there was a concept about Yahweh that some of our friends disagreed with, that he talked about, but I never got the clarification. And I think that is actually the story right there. I think that's the claim that I think they might have disagreed with. And I didn't know enough to have an opinion on it. So I was going to ask people more about that. So, yeah.
Well, Elephantine and Hellenistic period it's not old enough. So like Gnostic Informant says, I think that all of this is Hellenistic period. No, it's before that. And Amen is correct. And if that theory is correct, with like we have 3D scans of these temples. Like we know that they're part Greek. We know that Homer talked about cultures going there. That's the olive branch. Anybody that wants to take the
down there
side.
Ethiopia.
In northern Ethiopia. Yeah. And they blended with the Yemens.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to ask, have you guys seen that there's a new Odyssey coming out with Matt Damon playing Odysseus?
Yes, yeah, I think. I knew. Isn't Christopher Nolan directing that?
Yes,
the Batman. Okay, I was noticing Zack Snyder, and I was like, no, that's Batman.
He does interesting takes. He does realistic versions of stuff. Like Batman was, even though there's plenty of things that were not realistic about some of the things, but he does almost something that seems realistic.
Yes, it's grounded in reality, is what you
so I'm wondering how he's going to do the gods and stuff. You know, you have movies do it in all different kinds of ways. You know,
I bet you he's not going to ground the Odyssey in reality. I bet you he'll stick to the sources with this one.
Yeah,
he might not.
I don't know. I mean, he's such a good director. I'm excited to see it for sure.
Yeah, I haven't seen his late. He did a movie a few years ago where everyone had these weird masks on or something. I didn't watch it, but
right.
I heard it's good. I'll look at the name of it.
Masks.
Yeah.
Well, so the concept of the Enaree that we were talking about, you know, I'm curious to look more into John the Baptist now, only because it's sort of a precursor for Jesus. And one thing that I'm been trying to dig into is in the book Hermaphrodites, Gynomorphs of Jesus. He talks about John the Baptist leather belt resembling other garments that they would wear. And so I've been trying to look some of that up. I wasn't finding exactly that, but I was finding some versions that were similar to that. And so I'm wondering if how old that concept is. Mandy Warhol said that there's a few guys that have talked about this, but there's something about why they would try to either make up a story about killing a guy or kill a guy. What were Jews doing that they wanted to stop? Now, we discovered that after Constantine, Now the church was really up in arms, you know. But we're having a hard time with the Matthew 19:12 because it seems like he's trying to give the impression that not only is being eunuch preferred, it's like admired to a degree, the way that he describes it in that passage. And so, you know, what me and Marcel will do is we'll talk to ChatGPT and we'll try to prove it wrong. And we'll try to prove it right. And we'll say, hey, let's do an experiment. I want to argue back and forth a little bit. And it's like, ooh, what do you got? You know? So it's a really interesting tool to get you thinking, because it's just a pretend person kind of, you know, that just it can grab all these resources that we've now plugged in and we've been looking at today. One of them was this article, and I'll pull it back up here.
Oh, check the private chat. Which doctor, when you get a second.
Oh, okay, cool. Where do you go? Oh, yeah. I think that'd be good. So let's go to this eunuch thing. So we got the word eunuchos, from which the English word eunuch is derived, literally means bed keeper. So this is one of these interesting things where we run into something like this all the time, where we have a definition of a word, right? And then we have the +1 explanation. So if the definition of eunuchos means bed keeper, if somebody were to try to tell me that eunuchs didn't have their nuts, I'd be like, no, it just means that they're a bed keeper. It's like, but we all know that they don't have their balls. I don't know what it looks like actually, like in different dictionaries, but I brought that up yesterday when me and Marcel were going back and forth reading this article. The result of the trust position in close proximity to the throne, because they're not going to sleep with your wife. All right, so here we have a picture of a eunuch. Now, what I was talking about, and we've seen this not only like in my phone's freaking screensaver, which I need to crank up, but all the pictures I posted of a clean-shaven Jesus with, I don't want to say androgynous haircut, but if you look at some of the statues of these galley priests and these Enaree, it has this very androgynous look, and Jesus has a very androgynous look. Why? Well, because he's clean-shaven the first few hundred years in every freaking picture of him. The hair isn't super short. It's not super long. It's not it's not female or masculine. It's this very middle length, you know. And if you look at the statues that predate Jesus of the galley, there's even one that's postured exactly the way that Jesus is holding the magic wand in one of his paintings. And so my question is, how long has there been this undertone that Jesus was a cross-dresser? Or at least for the ceremonies, you know, or was a Jewish version of a guy participating in that kind of stuff. In my opinion, that's a much stronger reason to kill someone, to deter people from doing it in the Jewish religion, because the Jews have always sort of separated themselves with rules and customs and rituals and life practices and ways of thinking that are stitched into those kids' brains from birth. They're taught one narrative of life, and they're taught certain things. And you have to be born into the religion, right? Well, now, so for example, if you have Jews chopping their balls off, then you can't keep breeding more Jews. You have to keep recruiting Gentiles into the religion, which they don't want to do. You see what I'm saying? So guys that are doing this kind of stuff and saying, oh, I'm a rabbi, because they come from an unorthodox Jewish practice of the time, because they don't live in Jerusalem. They live out in the outskirts where tons of trade routes are coming to and fro. There's theaters to Dionysus, all kinds of stuff. And the concept, you know, at first, if you say that it doesn't sound crazy, people look at you like you are just insane. But when you start looking at this artwork, and of course, these aren't pictures of Jesus, but these predate Jesus by 700 years, 600 years. It goes all the way back to Egypt and further and further and further. And honestly, it seemed like there was a campaign against it moving forward through that time. It seemed like right after Jesus is when they started eradicating this from all over. It took 300 years, but it took also the installation of a Christianized Roman army. So people hijack this religion, and because of Jesus and the sacrifice and all that stuff, they stop doing that, or at least that's the whole gimmick. Is you got to stop cutting your nuts off. You got to stop drinking these special drinks. But out of respect for people following this, there did spawn a new religion. Then there's this persistence. Now, if a guy's actually doing miracles and stuff, I don't see how a religion predating it that's been expecting a Messiah doesn't see all the miracles and see all the miraculous stuff happening while he's there. And I don't know how the hell it would even stay the way it is in a denial of that. That's where you're losing me. But if there was an alternate theory to why they were even doing this during this rebellion, and what was going on with these, with let's say there's more than one rabbi to be anthropologically more correct, and let's say that they've based this one character off of 3 different guys that were killed for all this. That's why there's 3 guys in the thing, but they change it. They change the story, and then there's practices that they talk about in the Bible, but they don't link it directly to what Jesus is doing. But these castrated priests would lash themselves and whip each other's backs and stuff. And in the Bible, this happens to Jesus. Now, obviously, it happens from the hands of a Roman. But remember, they're writing a story with obviously this Chioni Greek, but in an essence of how many hundreds of years has this dualism existed in text? In every text, Greek poetry, Jewish Old Testament shit, and now these new books, they didn't just stop having this secondary, like you watch The Simpsons, there's jokes the kids don't get, but the adults do, because it's a too mature joke for them to get. My question is, how can we be so sure, given the instillment of an empire and the whole 2,000-year struggle that they've had pushing this to all 4 corners of the earth by force? How do we know that wasn't the reason why they wanted to kill both those dudes? Because you got to think, the guy that brought Jesus into the practice was a guy that also was pissing off other rabbis and stuff. Why? Because they're a bunch of rednecks from freaking all the way over in Galilee, and they're not doing the things that keep the customs and the norms and stuff. And at the time, that practice wouldn't have been considered crazy, because 1 mile that direction and 1 mile that direction, there's priests with their balls cut off. So it's not fucking ridiculous. And I know that anybody that hates Lady Babylon, this topic right here is where they really start to call you an Ammonite. But you have to think about
it's in the Bible.
Go ahead.
It's literally in the Old Testament and the New Testament. So again, you don't even have to go with Ammon stuff to even believe it. I mean, Acts chapter 8, 26 through 40 talks of a eunuch that literally is being baptized, which of course is the drug ritual, with Philip. And afterwards, it says, and when they came up out of the water, the Spirit of the Lord carried Philip away, and the eunuch saw him no more and went on his way rejoicing. Right? They did a ritual together. In the Old Testament, eunuchs, these are all high. The reason why the eunuchs were important politically is because you couldn't buy them off with sex. That's just what it was. From a priestly side, the castration thing was basically the same thing as a bloodletting. Bloodletting in Mesoamerica, the priests would cut their tongue, okay, and they would bloodlet as a sacrifice to the gods.
Or their junk.
The shamans would cut their balls.
Yes.
Because and the more pain that you endured, the higher esteem you got from the culture.
It was like military schools. You get airborne wings, air assault wings, Ranger tabs, SF tabs, combat patches. As a shaman, it was, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this.
Dude, the shamans were untouchable in war, in warring cities in Mesoamerica. If another tribe came and wiped your culture out, they would not touch the shamans. They wouldn't kill them. They're untouchable.
This is a Albrecht Dürer, D-U-R-E-R. This is a very simple painting or drawing, but he has some badass paintings that are way better than this. They based the character in Bram Stoker's Dracula, the early Dracula, when he was fighting for the church. They based his look on the artist of this picture here. But so the Galloy of Kybel. This was what we were talking about the other day. Then there's the Enaree. Here we have a eunuch praying.
The Enaree are so interesting. I can't I need to read more on them, but
they all are. Well, what's funny is that we see this in rock stars in the 80s, and even now, like K-pop bands that I can't tell if they're dudes or girls. It's this androgyny that seems to have this ascension in the arts world, which religion at one point was kind of in that world, sort of. It's hard to describe it, because everything of the arts has supported the religions in a way. The artwork, different plays and stuff reenacting all of this, and obviously manger displays, paint, stained glass windows, all these things that have gotten your brain in this picture of what it's supposed to look like. But can you imagine if in a world where the 21st century Christian is completely, let's just say that was the case, that John the Baptist was a leopard skin wearing, and I understand they're trying to make him look like a barbarian, but Amon's spinning it as a more female garb attire, if you will. And
they say Jesus comes back in Revelation wearing a golden girdle with paps. Paps mean tits. Did you not know that, bro?
Well, no, I've looked that up. I didn't think it doesn't say tits. It says mastoi, which means the breast, but they did use that word. It's a feminine word, but they did use the breast as a term for the chest on men. So it's a little bit debatable. That's why I'm really trying to nail down the pre-existing feminine characteristics that would actually allude to a castration, a crucifixion, just like fucking Addis, by the way, and then a transformation to being fully female now, because you've lost your balls and gained the vaginal wound of the penetration to the ribs. In an artistic realm, maybe even perhaps Hellenistic realm, that isn't a crazy thing to say, because that's how poetry worked back then. I mean, after all, you got animal-headed God, like we were saying in Mesoamerica, all the way to everywhere else. And so there are these transformations, these ascensions, these crossing the gender. After all, he's behaving like a woman, running these ceremonies like the priestesses were, because where he was from, that's what they were doing. That's the crowd of people that his mom was associated with. They're all unorthodox, I guess you could say. John the Baptist obviously isn't an orthodox rabbi, and then bringing Jesus in, and then he rebels against even John the Baptist. That was never the case. The dude that brought him in was doing whatever they were doing, and that's
what do you
learned all of his things.
To go along with your hypothesis of him breaking the rules, in which I totally agree with.
Right.
Basically, Numbers talks all about this, and in Numbers, Moses is giving the rod according to God, 12 rods. So people say, why the number 12? 12 rods are going to the heads of the tribes of the families. They're inscribing the head of that family on the rod itself. And then people go, well, what's the rod for? And they think it just means a club to like beat people into submission. Like, oh, you will follow the rules. No, it specifically says what the rod is used for in Isaiah, which we I think we did discuss before. And it's actually in other places, but to me, it's pretty pronounced in Isaiah. Let me find the exact rod message here. Yeah, there's a couple.
Funny, but this looks like another YouTuber that has a religion channel that I will not name. Here we have another, and look what we have. We got something. I don't know if the fingers were broken off, but it looks like they might have been doing I call it the Jesus shocker, but it's been around way before Jesus. And here we have these ornaments around the breast, and and that's not exactly what they describe it like, but how would they word that to describe this, for example? Would this not be the same kind of around the breast, a golden belt around the breast?
Golden girdle,
just like a picture of Jesus, minus the fact that it actually looks feminine, like with the jewelry and the hair and everything that we don't see on Jesus, right? And supposedly Jesus wore the Jewish attire, from what people had described. Maybe I could be wrong even there, but you would wear that stuff if that was what your people wore. But what you do in your extracurricular time and what you do and stuff like that, I can see somebody from the outskirts of wherever that was unorthodox doing things they didn't want to do. I could see that happening. It's not like that happening more than likely happened. Like that more than likely happened in history. That some of these rabbis coming into the practice that weren't around all the clergy and the Pharisees and stuff over in Jerusalem, that they were doing whatever they wanted to, that had to happen. And that had to be what all those letters to all these different churches were, these guys that were doing their own thing. It's, I don't know. It was I don't know. There's a lot there. And this is definitely interesting because this is really where people turn their heads at you. If you even entertain the idea of Jesus doing something like this, because a lot of people have never heard this concept, like myself, until, later.
but he was the usurping that he did was 1 Samuel 14:27. So they give the rods, right? And what is the rod for? But Jonathan heard not when his father charged the people with the oath. Wherefore he put the end of the rod that was in his hand and dipped it in the honeycomb and put his hand to his mouth, and his eyes were enlightened. 1 Samuel 14:29. Then said Jonathan, my father hath troubled the land to see, I pray you, how my eyes have been enlightened, because I have tasted a little bit of this honey. And so he's physically using it as a drug applicator. And they go, well, what is the oath? Well, there's even moments where they're scared of the oath. So 1 Samuel 14:26, and when the people were come into the wood, behold, the honey dropped, and no man put his hand to his mouth, for the people feared the oath. So they were applying the drug. That was the point of the rod. And Jesus came along. He didn't have one because he wasn't a head of one of the 12 tribes. He was an educated guy from Egypt that went to Egypt, came back, and he said, you know what? I want to do my own shit. That's why on Sunday he went into the field and gathered the grain. And they said, oh, what are you doing? You can't do that on the Sabbath. Remember that? So he came in going, screw this. I'm doing my own stuff. But when he got caught, when they put him on a tribunal, basically the Jews, and they were like, hey, what's going on, dude? He said, a lot of people think he said, I am the son, but he said, I am a son. There's a mistranslation there.
I wanted to look at that. What specific one are you talking about? Or are you not sure?
I'll have to look it up. I mean,
I know what you're referring to. There's a couple of different verses in there where it kind of sounds like he's alluding to that, but I see where people say he's not saying it in any way that you couldn't say yourself. That's the whole point. And I get that. And I hope Christians can be okay with, like, let's just say I'm calling myself a Christian. I'm going to believe the thing I believe, but I'm still going to be standing up for how good a lot of these guys are now. You know what I mean? I do think they need to grow the fuck up a little bit and stop thinking that this 7-year-old version of the Bible is literally what we're taking to the grave, and that the whole lesser and greater mystery altogether, even in the drug world, has its escalation. It has the beginner stuff. It has the escalation. And the Christians are going to have to be okay with that because they act anthropologically ignorant. And yes, I know I don't have a degree in it, but it's just so ridiculous to think that we couldn't apply any of the things that would have pissed Jews off, yet maintaining that they're not actually seeing no fucking miracles every day, or else they wouldn't be fucking Jews anymore. There would be nobody on the planet that was doing the old ways without recognizing Jesus as the damn Son of God, because they saw it all happening. But these metaphors of the earth splitting in two, it's just the people were divided over this, just like how they're divided over it today. If in fact the reason why they were killing these dudes and making up different stories for the other guys on the crucifix, oh, they're lay stays. They're okay.
Well, they think that Jesus was a rebellious person. That's what the Jews say. He was a rebellious guy, right? He was rebelling again, and that was the rebellion. It was this drug-induced. I am the door. I am the path. Follow me. That was his rebellion. Apparently, the problem is Gnostic. He wasn't based on high priests and shamans all over the world. In my opinion, he was a lukewarm, rebellious person. A real rebellious shaman would say,
I'll agree with that.
Say, fuck all these cults. You know, here's the plants, here's the medicine. Go do your own thing, guys, and figure it out for yourself and live your own life. But instead, he went on with this hierarchical bullshit and this Gnostic stuff, just like everybody else was doing, and all those little sects of their own, right? From the Nazarenes to the Marcion, all of them were doing their own shit, right?
Right.
And he was just another one of these guys early on doing that. But this predates all of that stuff. I mean, even Linear B and all this other stuff, man, that's not that old when we're talking about shamanistic stuff that's already in the archaeological record. At La Lendosa, this same shit, they were doing this in the late Pleistocene, 12,500 years ago. At what's that other place? You guys are gonna laugh because I forget the name, but there's so many places. Let me get the name of it.
What's the date of the last ice age? Is that 10,000 years?
The younger.
Yeah, around there. Yeah.
So the Pleistocene era would be before the ice age.
Yeah, but they were. I mean, many cultures rose up doing this same stuff, like not just once, and then they was all word of mouth, like the Jews say, "Oh, it wasn't like that." Like some cultures died out completely, and then their ruins were rebuilt by a whole different culture that started doing their own same type of worship in their own way, obviously with their own spin on it. But you would still have this central thing about entering the underworld, right? Here, I mean, people don't even know North American history. Did you know that the Cahokia, east of St. Louis, literally where St. Louis is founded, they had 20,000 people in 1000 CE, which, CE, not BCE. That was 10,000 more people that were in London at the same time. They had more, and they were doing their own cults. They were doing their own altars. They were doing their own medicines and their own, transpersonal experiences. But
I'm willing to bet the people who found these temples from before the ice age or whatever, they probably found things there too that gave them info of like, what were these people doing here? So then they tried to recreate it in their own way. It's just it's like ancient archaeology. It's like how we're finding it now and trying to figure out what we think they were doing. They probably just did that too. They found it and were like, what were these people doing here? Let's try and figure it out.
Unfortunately,
people that say
they like to erase your history and take credit for all kinds of shit, man.
A lot of
hating on white dudes or nothing, but it's like, bro, we keep finding out. Like, have you ever seen a Lumbee Indian?
No.
African Americans were here before fucking white dudes. Look at a Lumbee Indian. They haven't had African American integration since the slave trade. So why the fuck did they look so fucking African? There's no way that the blacks weren't here before freaking. They had to be. That whole tribe in North Carolina near the fucking coast, they look like they're half African mixed with a Native American. The whole fucking tribe. And they're funny as shit. Oh my God. I met so many guys at the freaking Lumbee. I went to a Lumbee party with the presidential shit a long time ago. And I made friends there that they would call me for months after that party, just talking. It's fun. But there's definitely some erased history here, and it's really sad. because we already go through stuff in our lifetime where the story wasn't what they said. And then we learn like nothing's what they said. And then we try to talk to academics about stuff, people from the religions. And it's always just this, we got to go back to second grade. And we got to talk about, Jesus and the disciples, it just becomes this fucking just big nothing burger. And it's just like, guys, there is so much more to this. The fact that they refused, and not our friends love talking about this, but I cannot get more Christians on the show, even trying to interact with them in the comments on their channels. People that do this debate shit, they take me out the comments before I've even started going off about anything.
Because they're a cult, dude.
And boom, gone.
Yeah, that's exactly, that's cult mentality plus why, if you have something that is a core of who you are, why are you even going to bother listening to something that's going to destroy it? You know what I mean? Like, I get it.
This is what I asked the apologists. I say, Jesus needs you to protect him? I thought he was this all-powerful God. He doesn't need your protection.
Oh.
Based on your own rules, some of the stuff seems a little contradictory. And that's why I feel a little bit like, I beat the shit out of the religion for years. And now I understand where they're coming from. They really don't know how to replace, in Indiana Jones, when there's the thing on the thing and he changes it out with the bag of sand.
Oh, yeah, the Temple of Doom.
Yeah, the switch off. They can't do that because if this isn't the way that they thought it was, then it's going to cause a complete existential crisis, which it shouldn't, which is why the book is written the way it's supposed to. It's supposed to explain to you that you're just on the third rung of where you're going to go. You just don't know you're going to get there yet, or else you wouldn't be reading the stupid book, or you wouldn't be watching this stupid show if you weren't still curious about something that you're trying to answer in yourself. Unfortunately, here's the cool thing for Christians, and they don't like this. We end up being this big representation for Christianity because we're sitting here arguing over what the hell the whole point was, right? Because if you're worshiping stupid shit, that would be the work of the devil to get you to call your savior the wrong name every day, to not participate in the practices that were in the origins. That's the whole fucking point. You don't have an entheogen religion in the middle of Judaism start, and then you get rid of the entheogens. That's not how it works. Then you don't have the whole thing. And this whole promise that you're not gonna recycle back into the universe again and stuff, it's just so shallow. It's so, and the Jews with the whole buy your way into heaven and there's different levels, and he's an angry God, it's just so sad because
it's a jealous God,
liberation. And I see why channels like Harmonic Atheist even do what they do, because they meet people who are still as emotionally struck as I'm pretending to be right now towards and I don't think would it really be a problem if the entheogens were a thing? Does it really have to ruin you? What I said to Marcel yesterday was this: if there was a God, would it really be crazy to think that there'd be female energy, considering dudes don't birth anything? Native Americans believe that some tribes believe that it's a female energy because dudes don't birth anything. What the fuck? When was the last time, besides a seahorse, you saw a guy go through that shit? You're designed and built for it. You're completely different in that aspect, And so there is something to honor there, because without women having babies,
dude, that right there, what you just said, is way bigger than people even realize. Really, it is, because we're talking about social. So Jason Giorgiani talks about social engineering through the religion, through all of that stuff, right? But he takes an Iranian Gnosticism, viewpoint. Yeah. Okay, whatever. That aside, what you just said, man, is so big, because it gets back into, well, what the fuck is a religion in the first place, right? And what is it actually trying to accomplish? And it goes over these three things. It's called salutogenesis. And salutogenesis, right? Amin kind of brushed at this a little bit with the ancients basically having a way to heal people. The indigenous cultures, the shamanism, the healers were doing the Basotho people in South Africa that take psilocybe milwati with another psychedelic plant. They also use it as poison darts, bro, and arrows. The Greeks aren't the only ones doing this shit. And they're using it to hunt.
Right there.
But the Basotho people in South America, bro,
Okay,
this strain was just identified by Western science last year, 2024. They were doing, and this is the cool part. So when they're going on their trips, and it's not just the shaman or the healers that do it, they do it to they call the patients. So like if you're going through stuff in life, they'll put you in front of a reflective surface, and the shaman healer will stand in front of you while you're tripping balls, and they'll try to answer your spiritual questions while you're going through it. That right there, bro, is that right there is so it's alchemy, it's hermeticism. That is the mercury. That reflective surface is the mercury.
The door there that Jesus says he is.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, yeah, it's a door. It's another doorway. You're right. And so they're using the entheogens as the door to experience these things. But what I want to get on is from a cultural aspect. We don't talk about the cultural stuff, and we're gonna do it right now. So there's two big things. It's called salutogenesis, and it's called let's see, pathogenesis. So all the stuff that Galen does, that Dioscoride does, that's all pathogenesis. It's understanding the plants that can reach a cure and how those things happen in the first place, right? How those ailments come about. Salutogenesis is something that you can do to prevent it, right? And we're not talking just the four fluids. We're talking about the psychographic nature, the psychosomatic ailments that people have dealing with everyday life, the loss of a mother, the loss of a father, the loss of a child. You know, people suffer through this stuff. Well, what helps them get through that? What helps them get in touch with the other side to let them know that this is okay and I can continue on in life and I will see that person again.
The mystery was salutogenesis then.
Well, yes, it was that. And it breaks down to three parts. They call it GRR, which is general resistance resource and specific resistance resource. And basically what they are, they're just various assets, strengths, and coping mechanisms that individuals and communities utilize to navigate stressors in that society, okay? So salutogenesis promotes the health, though. So what Jesus was doing was taking that away. He was using it as a power move. All of these groups, these cults that were starting hierarchies, this is why the Carl Jung, that, you know, people that say all about hierarchy. Well, yes, people tend to go in that direction. We know that in the record, but not everybody did. And it breaks down to two different groups, whether you're for salutogenics or you're not. And if you are, you're there to share that with everybody. It's not just, I can do it, you can't do it.
It's holding health and well-being over your head as if I'm the only one who can give it to you.
Exactly. Yeah, you're strong-arming people into this belief system, right? They don't talk about this stuff. A lot of people don't talk about it, but culturally, that's what it is. This is why I'm fascinated by it, because we're coming into an age and time where these are spreading and becoming more legal, and we are about to inherit this once again. And what are we going to do with it? Are we going to drop the ball? Are we going to actually have a real renaissance and actually partake and move forward? I'm not talking about people doing polytheistic crap. Of course, you're going to have people that do that. My whole problem is people that just say, we're in a simulation and I know we are. And then they just have this cheap theory of what they think the mystery is or what's happening. That's bullshit. And people need to be empowered to experience for themselves, figure out themselves who they are as a person, as Jung says, individuate. That doesn't mean I hold the key for you or Marcel or Witch Doctor has the key for you. You have your fucking key. And if somebody took that key and locked you in a mental cell in your head and threw that fucking key away, that's what Christians are doing to themselves, Witch Doctor. They're taking that key. They're saying, I'm living in the confines of this religion, and that key is over there, and I'm not going to unlock the door. If you don't unlock the door and discover really what's going on, and people say, well, what's going on? Well, look, do you want to throw away fucking 100,000 years of human, maybe even more human use of entheogens to be salutogenic, to carry on culturally what they're doing and interact with nature and be a part of it and understand that humans aren't going to get there alone. This idea that humans are going to, AI is a stupid trick, right? Because it's all just man-made. It has nothing to do with nature. So when you're acting outside of it,
programmed a certain way, even
could you say though that because humans are a part of nature, what we create is a part of nature?
No, it's not. Because how can you be holistic? Dude, the best theories we have are totally not holistic. And and again, I always bring this up, but Leibniz, like, really good physicist that came up and said this. He was the one that was against Newton. He said, look, you can't understand the cosmos unless you understand everything that's interacting with each other right now, from the black hole over there, the black hole over there, the galaxy pulling us that way, the galaxy pulling us that way. You can't say that there's a uniform cosmos. You can't. And really what you can say is when you actually understand that and you get that message, whether you're in a trance or you're on hallucinogens, you understand there's a flow. And when you flow, you actually reach that level with nature and you go, that's what nature is. I'm not going to prop something cheap up and say this is what nature is or this is what's going to happen. I'm going to flow in that river with nature and be a part of it rather than try to control it. But that's the problem with these religions, man. They've tried to control
it. Yeah, right.
They've tried to control it, man. They're taking away your birthright to tap into nature. They really are. And if people don't see that and wake up, it's not my job to fucking go to Christian church and say, you all are fucking morons. That's not my task. You see a bunch of atheists do it, witch doctor all the time, right? They're on the street corners. Well, Christianity, come debate me. A lot of channels, and that's unfortunately that's all YouTube is now. It's people debating culture and religion.
If I had that guy on the show, I would just interview him. I wouldn't expect to try to convert this dude. That's ridiculous. You know what I mean? But I would just have a concept. I would talk to him about what we believe and see if he likes it and still wants to be our friend afterwards. Yeah. More than likely he would, because in the Christian's mind, you can't give up on anyone. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, and I would love to have him on if he would.
Who was it? Who did you say?
Cliff. He's this guy.
Yeah.
Preaching in the 90s. Yeah.
I used to have a few summers ago, these Jehovah's Witnesses used to come to my house, and I would let them in, and I would just tell them about what I believed, and they would keep coming back to hear my side. They didn't come to
Mormon kids will show up.
They came to listen to what I had to say just because
Mormon kids will show up every week at your house and talk about religion just because you want to.
Yeah.
I think it's so cool. But they get a really bad rap, and we're going to have a Mormon on the show soon. I just sent him
interesting.
To send him questions so that he can brush up on his research.
They're just people just like we are. And once you look at them from that context and really bring them down to that level, there's no, we're this, we're that, blue, red, religion, not religion. Just this is the plane. And guess what? We're all on it. And
exactly.
Treat each other like that. But also, I guess if you want to go out about my thing is always empower people indirectly rather than just like telling them, because if they want to look for it and search for it, it's there. The problem is in these circles and with YouTube, you guys know this, too many people get used to just being told and they get lazy. And so they subscribe to people like Myth Vision, like, oh, tell me about the Greek stuff. And it's like, if you really had an interest in Greek, maybe you should try to learn to read. I don't have that much of an interest to learn to read it, because I see a lot of these evidences all over the world, and I'm putting the bigger picture together from all cultures, not just one.
Yeah.
That's what the whole thing is. That's what this whole project has really been, was finding where all the similarities are. So, like, for example, take a conservative Christian and take like us. We're I guess you could call us, as a joke, a guy like myself. If I'm going to call myself a Christian, which I don't really, but let's just pretend, I'd say we're like a Christian anthropologist. Let's say like how Christian Science is a religion that Ellen DeGeneres belonged to, I guess, when she was a kid. Well, let's make one up. Christian anthropology. where we look at all the anthropological roots of Christianity and participate in what Jesus was doing, which is kind of what the Knights Templar were even doing. They were trying to spread the same message from the pitch of Jesus said that the miracles that he did, he said, you can do too. And that's what he's trying to show you, the visions and stuff. So Tim Hogan has a really interesting take on the Knights Templars version of Christianity. It's different than the Chick-fil-A Christians or the educated Orthodox bros, as like Steve from Cross Bible talks about. He's sort of like one of the Orthodox bros, you know, because he's a contemporary guy. He thinks like a rational dude with the questions we asked him, but he gets to maintain, and I give anybody that. If God had made all these plants for us for mental relief and for the betterment of humankind, it's definitely what they're designed for. I don't see any reason why they're so good at that. And
I think the idea of
getting away from it. Wouldn't God send an incarnation of him or herself to earth to re-show people that, to push it into clergies getting rid of it? That in my brain doesn't sound too ridiculous. And that's playing along with it still being the son of a God, which isn't even necessarily a definitive thing either in the eyes of a lot of different conversations. So
I think the real rebellion, though, and you said God, as when you bring up and invoke that term, polygod or God, doesn't matter. That is the problem. Because to me, the idea of God is bullshit. It's and I'm not coming at this with an atheist thing. I'm coming at this with a nature thing. Because you're going to tell me that there's some entity that is outside of nature and can control it, time and space. I think that idea is just all about control, domination, and basically saying that there's some higher power that controls everything and pulls the strings like a marionette. And I think that is stupid. I think that we don't even understand nature enough and haven't explored it enough because we've been so inundated globally with these stupid theories of this higher power thing. I don't think that that's what God is. I don't believe in a God, not in that context.
not in that way.
I believe that nature and everything is moving, flowing together, that the dipole repeller is a real thing, that people think, oh, the universe is uniform. No, it's not. We know it's not. And, you know, all of the cosmology that we see and all the stuff that I have a degree in, right, an advanced NASA-funded degree, people aren't going to tell, like, I know this stuff, right? And I look at the literature, I know the physics, I know the mathematics, I know the new stuff that's coming out. And to be somebody on the side to say that there's a God that controls nature, you're no better than an enlightenment philosopher. That's all enlightenment philosophy is. From Spinoza to Heidegger to Descartes to Cartesian rationalism, all of them, dude. All of them are that, to Nietzsche. They're all that enlightenment bullshit. Now they poked and prodded the other enlightenment philosophers with their own, right? And they had this thing of well, the death of God is not a good thing because you need it for people to believe something. I think that's trash. I think honestly is, how do you know? And that's a scared thing to believe. The guy had a mental breakdown in his older age. Any of you guys that like Nietzsche, go look at this and ask yourself, what the fuck? You're telling me a guy that you put on an altar and said that individuated when he was young, broke down and cried because there was a horse laying down on the side of the road? Nah, that was his moment, his coming to nature moment. He found it, and good for him. He actually did, because a lot of people go through life and they never do. You encounter that, and you're forced through that. Carl Jung talked about it. LSD and mescaline, it will force you to encounter nature and accept her. It will make you encounter your collective unconscious and not try to overcome these things that you might not like about yourself, but to integrate them into your life. It's not about beating things. It's about integrating them into yourself. The Jaguar cult in Mesoamerica talked about the same shit.
Yeah.
So the cool part is that you see all of this for what it is. You know that we were just like they were. We're not different. All those cults were doing the same thing. They're not different. They were using slightly different substances, and we can debate which ones were better if we wanted to. And we all, whatever. But I think that we need to come to a realization that there is millions of vectors, billions, trillions of vectors, endpoints that are always interacting with themselves. And people say, well, would you think a rock is conscious? Yeah, it all is conscious, because those mountains might be moving slow as fuck, but they're moving. Right? Well, they're moving. They're just moving very slowly. And so all these things are moving. The river, they're forming rivers. Where do you get your water? I get it from. You're not outside of this shit, bro. You're not outside of any of it. And so just because you think a human, the heliopods, I get this thing all the time. People, oh, do you believe in space travel? And, do you know what the heliopause is, my friend? It's a region outside of our solar system that's about 54,000 degrees Fahrenheit. You think a spaceship's going to make it through that?
I saw an article about that recently.
You think the spaceship's going to make it through that? Yeah, okay, dude. So what we are, these little stacks, we're these little eggs. Every solar system's a little egg, right?
Like a cell, like a cell.
And there's, a chance for life to happen there. Getting out of that egg is...
It's an organic petri dish. So I think of it like this. Bear with me.
Yeah.
We make computers, and we can make artificial worlds with metal and,
electricity.
Yeah, we've created the apparatus to contain this. So whatever made us, the apparatus it gets to use is the 3D organic material we are made out of. So whatever that is, and as a joke, only a spiritual realm would be able to manipulate an organic realm, and then an organic realm can manipulate a digital realm, and then the digital realm, what can that then create? What will computers make that we don't even know about? Because we make a consciousness. We're making consciousness now. We're making a digital version of it, right? And that's all that we've created as far as life. We might bring a couple of extinct animals back here and there, fucking Jurassic Park, right?
But AI relies on computers, and computers rely on energy, my friend. Right, so even these people that, we're gonna live in this AI world, and we're gonna have AI wives and AI robots, and we're all gonna live virtual. No, you're not. That AI is coming from an energy source, whether it's radioactive, wind, solar, whatever, dude. It's still nature. You can't get apart. You can't get away from it. And this push.
That's what I was trying to say earlier. Okay, cool. Okay.
And when you're on when the psychedelics will tell you this straight to your fucking face. And you might not like it if you're one of these transhuman people that are pushing, futuristic, humans in space and all this other shit. If you're one of those people, there's going to be a wake-up call for you if you ever do mushrooms. They're going to tell you, nah, bro, that's not the way it works. You need to get in touch with nature. And again, I think if we ever do leave the solar system, my opinion is we're not going anywhere without the planet. We're going to have to. We're Earth, bro. We're Gaia, man. We're not separate from it. We're not some independent thing that created it, and this idea of God creating it. It makes no sense to me that there would be something outside of the power of the universe. It's asinine, and I think it's a cheap way to get people to flock to you because you're somebody that's saying it's like the best story. Who can tell the best story? Well, Witch Doctor can, because guess what? His God is all powerful. He's got one that kicks everybody's ass, and he's got weed, bro, and he's got DMT. Just follow his God, and you're good, dude. And everybody's like, hell yeah, let's go there. Right, and that's what
back in the day,
That's exactly how it was.
Yeah. I watched a video the other day where a guy, I sent it to you, Tiger Shark, a month or so ago. I'm not sure if you watched it, but the guy basically convinced ChatGPT that God exists, and the way he did it was through contingent truths versus natural truths. And a contingent truth would be like, yo, my guitar is right there. It's true, but it's contingent on the fact that it's on the stand. And the stand is there because it's contingent on the fact that there's a floor. And the floor is contingent on the fact that I have a house, and so on until you get all the way to the universe. So what is the truth that the universe sits on? Because the universe is contingent on something too.
Yeah, but we don't know. And my thing on
that's a fun
tricked it a little bit in saying what would have a will outside of the universe, and the word will, right?
This is the labyrinth that is in the Glaucosmith. This is the labyrinth that's in the Dragwire cult in Mesoamerica. This is the labyrinth that's found at in Angkor Wat in Cambodia, bro. They have labyrinth mythos. This is what this is, because you have so many people trying to figure this out, and guess what? All you ever get to is you go, oh shit, I'm back at the fucking center. I'm back in the middle, and I don't have an answer.
Yeah, it's the Ouroboros. It's the Ouroboros, man.
It's you're eating your own tail over and over and over again. This is why you keep getting these cheap ideas and these cheap theories and teleologies of the end. This is Christianity is no different. It's a teleology that says Jesus is going to come back. He's going to kill 2/3 of the population. The rest are going to go to heaven, and there's going to be a new Jerusalem on earth. That's what it is, right? So that's just a stupid teleology. Tell us about what the end goal is of what's going on, and people can buy into that if they want. Another cheap one is that same DMT guy, the guy that's like, oh, it's all about lasers and we're in a simulation. That guy also is he's a new age Jesus, because he's postulating a new teleology. That's really no different than what Jesus was doing. He's just doing it with DMT. I'm glad Strassman and I'm glad that other guy that was on Danny's show shut that down, because as soon as I heard that, I was like, dude, this is shit. And I'm glad a lot of people call him out on that. I'm actually glad that people told him.
I was like, what the hell? If I was 16 still, I would have ate that up like a motherfucker, man. Like.
So before we go today, guys, I was gonna talk about the Mar Saba letter a little bit more. Okay, now while we were looking into some of the chapters here we have a picture of a passion slave.
Ooh.
Right. I could kind of pinpoint the century that this was drawn, but I'm not going to even guess. So the Mar Saba letter. Now, in this book, they talk about a hidden passage from Mark that was rediscovered. And I'll just read this. The Mar Saba letter is a Greek document which scholar Morton Smith reported in 1960 that he had discovered in the library of Mar Saba Monastery in 1958. All right. So you know how my brain immediately wants to think that this is fake, because who the fuck finds something in 1960 and it turns out to be so incredibly the time that you would be looking for. All right. So the document, this is what the scroll story. So the document has been lost and now only survives in 2 sets of photographs. Lost. Someone has it and is probably sold on the black market and stolen. Like it's people are. It's secret who has this, I'm sure.
It's in some private collection somewhere.
The next purports to this claim that Alexandria contains only known references of the secret Gospel of Mark. All right, so we have talked about all of the Nag Hammadi. We've shown the Mary with the purple fingers, working the purple, burning purple incense, or putting purple in the altar to burn. So we found the burning purple, at least one version of that.
Yeah, there's all kinds of mosaics of Mary with purple fingers.
Right. Well,
and her spinning the purple. I found ancient paintings of that, or medieval era paintings of that.
There is, just like in Game of Thrones and stuff, Neil's got a new channel. And there's purple lipped, maguses and stuff. It totally, there's gonna have to be a little bit of that in there. Now we don't all have to believe it. It's fine, but I mean, come on. There's a lot here. So Smith stated that while cataloging documents of the ancient monastery Mar Saba in the summer of 1958, he discovered the text of a letter handwritten to the end papers of Isaac Vossius, 1646 printed edition of the works of Ignatius of Antioch. All right, so the Holy Hand Grenade of Antioch. This letter is consequently referred to as the Mar Saba letter of Clement to Alexandria. In 1973, he published a book on the subject, followed by a second book for a popular audience in 1974. Smith's books reproduced black and white photographs, so here's the monastery.
That's the Mar Saba monastery, okay.
All right, and so Smith's book reproduced black and white photographs, which he stated had taken at the time of the discovery in 1976. Groups of 4 scholars visited Mar Saba and viewed the manuscript. The visit remained unknown until 2003. Oh my God. When one of the party guys, Stromsa, published an account of the visit in 1977, the volume containing the manuscript was taken to the library of the Greek Orthodox Patriarchate.
Yeah.
In Jerusalem. The same year, the manuscript pages were removed from the bound volume of the librarian Callistos Doros and then photographed and kept separately. These photographs were published in 2000. Subsequent attempts by scholars to view the manuscripts have been unsuccessful. Shame. Paleographers working, I wonder why. Paleographers working from Smith's photographs have assigned dates from the late 17th to the early 19th centuries. So the letter addressed to the Theodore discusses the secret gospel of Mark, quotes two excerpts from the gospel, one of which mentions the mystery of the kingdom of God. Clement begins by commending Theodore's actions against the Carpocratians. He then turns to address question posed by Theodore regarding the gospel of Mark, a secret variant of which the Carpocratians claim to have. Clement admits to knowledge of the second secret or mystical version of the gospel written by Mark for those being perfected. However, he asserts that the version promoted by the Carpocratians is not an accurate representation of this. They have corrupted the original with their own false additions. To illustrate this, two ostensibly genuine experts from the gospel are studied. The letter breaks off abruptly as Clement begins to explain the passages. So, blah, 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 blah. Oh, that's all they're going to have here? All right, cool. All right.
They're going to keep trying to defend their stuff with new archaeological finds. They're going to reinterpret things to make it seem like it's a Christian context. But here's the crux of the problem. To your friend Stephen, too, Cross Bible, I will challenge him. Why did Jesus, when he was addressing directly his disciples, apostles, saying that he was going to come back in their lifetime, and he never came back, and they did, and they perished, they died. So if you can answer me that, right, as a believer, any of you watching this, that as a believer, you need to answer us why he said that and why he never came back if he indeed was somebody that said he was going to be. That's why I call him a deadbeat dad, because he told him he was going to do something and he never did. And so for all these people that say, well, he's coming back and he's going to be here in 2,000 years and all this other stuff, right? It's just ridiculous, right? He's the Messiah. He's, all pro-Zion stuff. It's just ridiculous. And that you really need to ask yourself these questions, right? And I'm not coming at it from I hate you. I'm not coming at it from this. I wish the best for every single Christian on this planet. I really do. I just don't like the fact that you're trying to, and it doesn't go for just Christianity, it goes for all religions, to be honest with you, because they all say their God is the best. Well, that's bullshit. And first and foremost, look at every culture that came and existed before, from Mesoamerica to Africa to China. Their gods all perished when the culture perished. So what does that tell you? It tells you that the gods are relative. Relativity is based on the culture and the time period. And that's it. And when the culture goes, their God goes. Same with the Greeks. Same with everything else.
Or they get assimilated into the next culture, right? And then morphed a bit.
Well, that's what's happening now is you get all these denominations that over time are morphing it. This is another piece of that happening in real time, live with Witch Doctor, looking at these pieces of evidence that Christians are going to take and run and try to say, well, Jesus, it's like, is it the Pentecostal church? They're the ones that came out and said that Jesus was going to return in 18 something else, and he never did. And they came up with this math all based on Daniel chapter 7 and 8, and it never happened, right? And so it's taking these pieces of evidence that they think are legitimate. They're coming up with a new theory, right, to try to support themselves. I don't even know if there's so many different versions of Christians that they don't even know what's going on. Well, here's the truth. Nobody knows what's going on. And you should get used to that. You should prop that up on your pedestal and say that moment to moment, that's what I'm living for. And there is no God. And I'm going to make my own decisions and have my own experiences and live my own truth and think for myself. That's what people should be saying. Fuck the God thing. And that goes for all of them. I come from a Native American background. It could come from Native American beliefs, but that's one thing that we've always had is empower yourself. There's Native American mythos and things like that, but these are spirits. And guess what? You know how you get in communion with the spirits? Just like Jesus did. You do
Yes.
the drugs.
Yes.
You do the plants, you do the fungi, and you go to the underworld, or you go to the spirit world, or you go to heaven, and you meet with your quote unquote creator or your ancestors. And that's what they've all said. So why would you want to stop people from that experience? Why? Why would you try to have a hierarchy towards that yourself? Well, it wasn't about drugs. It was about him having special powers and being the son of God. Well, then why did he lie to people? Screw the kid thing in Gethsemane.
They
Why
would
did
have
he lie
never,
to? Why
killed
did
someone doing that stuff for real, So that's ridiculous,
Yeah. Just
What's
ask yourself these questions. Don't listen to the dogma. That's my message to them. And I wish the best for everybody. And I wish that
Yeah,
I'm
for
not
sure.
here to change people. I'm not here to convert people. I'm not here to tell people this or that or follow me.
Stay
Don't
Christian.
follow me.
Just
Go look it up for yourself and
right.
make up your own mind.
It's like stay Christian, but don't laugh at us if something kind of jars your. Don't let it offend you if something that we say actually kind of questions how ridiculous whatever version you love. You don't have to run away from the religion.
Thinking is hard for people though. Some people just want a laid out itinerary of how to live, and they just put their head down and follow it because it's easier to just do that.
I wish I had the luxury of that.
Yeah.
I would have stayed in the army long. I'd still be in the army if I was religious. Fuck yeah, because I wouldn't have been scared of dying and stuff, like. And now I'm not an atheist anymore, but I wish I was even like I am now. Back when I was considering re-enlisting at like 23, I just was an atheist and I was negative about it. And I was like, I got to get the fuck out the army because I'm gonna get deployed again. I'm gonna fucking die. Just the chances, my God, the stuff that we do, and you go out the wire a lot, and you deal with the local population. That's your job, And so I was like, I was lucky, the first go round being deployed and being in 6 years and, walking away from it with all my limbs. I'm very, very lucky. So I was like, I need to quit while I'm ahead. And honestly, I think getting out of the army with an honorable discharge, with a perfect 6-year reputation was the smartest thing that I did because I ended up going down a really bad path of depression when I got out. And if I had dealt with that in the army, I probably would not have, it probably wouldn't have helped my career. So I was glad that I kind of cut the ties with it and quit while I was ahead. And, now I just battle with the VA for fucking college and stuff they promise. So not bad though. By the way, all of that has been approved. So for those that were curious. So let's read this and then let's go be adults the rest of the day. Here we go. So the secret gospel of Mark. Now we've talked about almost every single gospel in old live streams that are no longer up, on old episodes, but this is one that we recovered when we were reading from this book the other day. And so now I'm going to just read what we got. So, and they entered into Bethany, and there was a woman there whose brother had died. She came and prostrated to Jesus, and said to him, "Son of David, have mercy on me." The disciples, however, rebuked her, like they always did. It's like no wonder they started doing things, stopped doing certain things Jesus was doing, because they were constantly bitching about what he was doing also, which is weird to me. But it's kind of like when it's like, take the leader out, and then we'll, then we'll change it. We'll take away some of the stuff that they're killing people for. This dude's crazy. He does it all. And growing angry, Jesus went away with her into the garden where the tomb was. And suddenly there was heard a loud sound from the tomb. And Jesus drew near and rolled away the stone from the door of the tomb. And entering immediately there where the youth was, the Neoniskos, he stretched out his hand and raised him up and grabbed hold of his hand. But seeing him, the youth loved him and started to implore him that he could be with him. And coming out of the tomb, he entered the house of the youth, for he was wealthy. This must be the wealthy Neoniskos from Matthew 19, or or from just earlier in Mark, whatever passage it is, I forget. But anyway, back when before the scene before the freaking garden or whatever. Even though this is a different time, but anyway. After 6 days, Jesus ordered him, and when the evening came, the youth approached him naked. being covered with only a robe. I'm sure it says Sindona. And he stayed with him that night. We have to look at the Greek. For Jesus taught him the mystery of the kingdom of God. Wonder what he taught him that night. From there, he rose and returned to the other side of the Jordan. Jesus and John approached him in contrast, and naked on naked, and other things you wrote about and not found. However, the words that Jericho introduces them. Sister youth and Jesus loved them, and Salome Jesus not received them. And our false report, certainly indeed the true existence according with the true philosophy.
Well, John was 14, and that's according to Irenaeus, which is their own early church father. Irenaeus was the student of Polycarp, and Polycarp apparently was a student of John. But they say that John himself was 14 when he was following Jesus, 14 to 16. So I don't even care if the kid was 20 and Jesus was 30-something years old. It's just an odd thing. But we all know, like when you read the PGM, when you read these things with kids in it, even the Bible talks about the experiences and the psychedelics and the kids, actually. The yoke. It's called the yoke. And they talk about breaking that yoke of the kid, which means going through that experience, right? And this is talked about in the Old Testament. You have to look at it from that lens. People are just ridiculous if they think that this has no shamanic context. I mean, the anthropological record is there. They're not looking at the right scholars. They're looking at scholars that are writing books about the zodiac and how that plays a part in the Bible. I mean, that's just chicken scratch. It's not really getting into what we see in the archaeological record. It's not getting into the absolute dating and the surrounding relative dating methods from all the other things that we're finding in it. The one person that these mainstream guys had on their show, Dr. Adler, he had the best stuff, and that's the theory they went with. They went with the theory, we think it's a Hellenistic thing. We don't see evidence well, dig deeper, because there's a lot more scholars. There's scholars that have 11,000 people. There's scholars that have only 100 citations on their papers that nobody knows, that gets into the nitty-gritty of the archaeology. And we're talking about
people also don't want to find it. They're just willfully ignorant because they found a scholar that supports the bias they want already.
And it goes both ways, from the atheistic standpoint, and it goes from the Christian standpoint as well. You're right. People don't want to think for themselves.
Anything I want, really. I can find it. Like you could find a paper record that proves and disproves everything. Like you right? Like you can make it.
No, I mean that's the main point. You say it's information bias, but guess what? Again, we should live our lives like we don't have answers, and the best answer that Marcel has should come from himself. It shouldn't come from me. It shouldn't come from witch doctor. It shouldn't come from a church. It shouldn't come from anybody else. Right. Marcel should know what's best for Marcel.
yeah, true. Yeah, yes, but yeah. I agree. But it sounds like you're saying your bias is what's best for you.
No, it's it's not even a bias. It's actually Marcel returning to his form. It's what Jung called individuation, where Marcel understands himself. Where Marcel looks at the mirror and enters his own collective unconscious. I can't do that for you. I'll never be able to do that. No, so when people say, well, therapy, I listen to a lot of people but they don't even untap that there. They don't. Because a lot of that therapy doesn't work. We know that there's statistics on it. A lot of it doesn't work. So people end up on medications hiding from the truth. Well, when you unleash that truth and fully over years of practice and integrating it to your life, what you realize is that my own intuition, my own instinct that I have is what got me here. It's what got humanity here to this day. Chase is asking questions in the chat about that stuff. It's about all the scientific theories. Well, guess what? Physics, the best quantum physics theory that we have on this date, it's not a law for nature. That's preposterous. That's hilarious. A law for nature, like nature is following the laws of man-made physics, that's ridiculous. It's not a law for anything. It's how we are interpreting nature's movements, right? And when we put that law as a blanket on all of the observations we make, and those observations aren't following those laws, now we start to see what reality is. And reality, when we talk about consciousness, people go, well, you're just a bunch of weird people on drugs. Have you ever thought of that? Go look at the research. Roland Fisher, my friend, we talked about this. University of Maryland has talked about deep consciousness studies on psilocybin versus placebo groups. And it's very apparent that the people that are on the psilocybin are more in tune with visionary reality, more in tune with auditory reality when they're doing these tests on that.
Awareness and stuff.
The
And
awareness is heightened. Yes.
I knew you meant finding me for me. I was just playing devil's advocate and asking the.
But it's not, because it's actually saying I don't know, and being okay with that, and saying there is no like, well, is your God mean you don't know, or is the God of this side, that side, or we don't know the questions or whatever else? No, it's not, because what I'm trying to impose is that people will only know themselves. They have to live their truths, but put that against nature. If I take my own correspondence of what I think is true for me, and I put that on nature and overlay it, I can see if there's a one-to-one correspondence. Am I wrong? Yeah, I'm wrong some of the times, because I learned nature tells me, right? Sometimes I'm correct, right? And each of our paths are that, right? It's different ways. But if you play this game of, well, what's the end goal? What's up with God? What's up with the answers? What's going to happen to humanity? If you play that goal, you'll end up in a labyrinth with the Minotaur. That's what's going to happen.
Yep.
Look at this real quick, guys, and we got to go. But today we were talking about the transgender roots of potential transgender roots in Christianity, mimicking Gali or Enaree, castrated priests that were in existence for about 600 years. And lasted for about 300 years and arguably a little bit longer, with the onset of the Holy Roman Army being Christianized after Constantine. About 100 years after that, you start seeing all of that eradicated. So one thing that I wanted to just point out is that we have here the Gospel of Thomas, which is some of the Nag Hammadi stuff, all right? And let's just take a look at making two into one, all right? So just remember, we're talking about the transcendental transformation of Jesus the Christ into an androgynous or feminine character in Revelation. All right, so let's just take a look at something that he supposedly said. And Jesus saw some little children nursing. He said to the disciples, "These nursing children can be compared to those who enter the kingdom." They said to him, "Then we'll enter the kingdom as little children?" Jesus said to them, "When you make two into one and make the inner like the outer and the outer like the inner and the upper like the lower, and so make the male and the female a single one, so that the male won't be male nor the female female. When you make eyes in the place of an eye, a hand in the place of a hand, a foot in the place of a foot, and the image of the place of an image, then you'll enter the kingdom." Is he talking about an androgyny to your entrance into the kingdom?
Yes.
Or am I
interpreting
this?
Well, he said, what did he say to Mary? He also told Mary that he had that Mary, I forget what book it was, but she had to basically, I think it's the Book of Thomas, where line 109, I believe, where he tells her, like, you have to be like a man, and she's going to be like a man so she can enter heaven. I believe that's what he said.
If you don't fast the world, you don't find the kingdom. If you don't make the Sabbath into a Sabbath, you won't see the Father. All right, let's see what we got. The world is drunk, spirit and body, divine presence.
So
there are three deities there, divine, where there are two or one. I'm with them. Does that make sense? You're one of the three deities. Prophet and doctor, no more part of the parable, the fortified city, the parable of the lamp, parable we can't see.
Read Gospel of Thomas 1:14. Dude,
I don't know how. Oh, is it? Hold on. Here we go. 1:14. Guys, if you want to go to gospels.net, that's where I'm at right now. If it's not,
this is a cool website. Yeah, I'm going to be using this one.
I have gone here a bazillion times. It's just been a while since I've pulled these up. Peter and Mary. Mary should leave us because women aren't worthy of life. Oh my God. Jesus said, "Look, I am to make her a man so that she may become a living spirit too. She's equal to you men, because everyone makes herself manly will enter the kingdom of heaven."
There you go.
Yeah, that's why I only date bodybuilder shit. I'm just playing. Just
how, how is making a woman a man androgynous though? Isn't androgyny a male looking like a female, or is this does it go both ways?
It's either
It's
way.
both.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
both
yeah.
ways.
Looking androgynous is looking like the Statue of Liberty. It's just looking like
Okay.
both.
Okay, yeah. No, it's both ways. Yeah, that was a stupid question. Never mind. Yeah.
It's all good.
So that's where
Yeah.
it comes from, and you're probably right. I think there was all sorts of things that people were believing in doing these because honestly, they're drugs. I honestly, I think you have to look at the rich cultural context of each and every single cult. Now, Hamilton Morris, as much as I like the guy, I see him like Amin calls him a wizard. Okay, if he's a wizard to me, he's like Radagast. He's like the brown wizard, okay? Because he kind of scratches the surface here and there. He's done some things, but you got to look at it from like the anthropological studies and their own oral traditions and stories and what they're saying. This is nothing new. This is nothing new, but it's limited in the number of tribes that were doing certain things. When I posted that picture of the opium coming into the Mediterranean, into Israel, right? From the Indo-Iran trade. And we're not talking about Silk Road that they call from 300, all that stuff. That's later stuff that the empire were doing. We know that because we can track the poppy. There's literature in archaeology that we know the poppy was coming into the region at certain points. And guess what? It aligns perfectly with what the Christians say in Genesis 6,000 years ago. That's when that food from heaven was coming in. Okay. That's when we start seeing these things get into the practices a little bit with what they're doing. But some of those drugs were crazy, man. Some of them were nuts. I mean, you're talking about deliriants, but that's what they celebrated. So again, if you were like a shaman or high priest back then doing that stuff, even if you did something crazy with kids, with whatever, people were just like, yeah, because he's divine. He sees God. He can't do no wrong. It's like a Catholic priest that molests a kid. They're going along with that for how long, thinking they're doing the right thing? Obviously, they're not doing the right thing.
Maybe there's something to the combination too. Like, I can't remember which one. I'm sure one of them is a deliriant, but maybe the combination of everything kind of alters how much of a deliriant it is. Kind of like how theanine takes the edge off caffeine or whatnot.
I agree with you to a point, but this is what I'll say about that. When we were talking about the allosteric modulation, do you want to be a part of the allosteric modulation that nature creates, or do you want to be a part of the ones that man creates? I know my answer.
Yeah, me too. And I'm not the same page as you, of course, but yeah. Sorry to interrupt. Anyway.
I feel you for sure. Well, and in light of even all of that, guys, I've been in this, competitive world for a while. And in the world I come from, there is an androgyny sometimes to a competitor that's female when they have been competing for a while and they're at the height of like their pro career and stuff. And, this is all to worship the feminine form. It's just that the way that women looked back in the day was also a little bit different. The testosterone levels were also higher back in the day when they were drawing these full-figured Sibylline oracle structures. If you see them, they're full-figured women and stuff. And just because we are about a week away from having little Steven, I am going to actually show a picture of my wife at her last show before we get out of here.
Oh, yes.
What's his name again?
Say what?
What are you? Steven. Awesome.
Yeah. It's my two granddad's last names. But,
that's
in
your
the
wife?
bodybuilding world, sometimes the women will have more muscle than even men. And there's a very Greco-Roman look to this as well, which, we're talking about transgenderism. I would dare anybody to say I was transphobic, considering that in the bodybuilder world, some of the women that I've dated have been bigger than some men. And and sometimes are taking the exact same, I'm saying over a course of being a bodybuilder, numerous, past relationships and stuff, they are taking hormones that are turning them, for the lack of the better word, no differently than a female becoming a man. And because of the experience I have with those kinds of performance enhancing drugs and giving guys super hard erections, that's about all I can really do for people. With this experience I've had in the bodybuilding world, I've also turned women into men that wanted to transition, with giving them the proper health advice, because they were having to take more of these hormones than their body wants to. And so, if anybody out there was a little offended about the way we talked about stuff, I just want to remind people that I have always been an advocate for people expressing themselves. And my wife's brother is a trans female.
Yeah.
And so my family, there's no transphobia. And of course, Marcel and Tiger Shark, we have no transphobia and no hate towards any of that. Last thing we want to do is get canceled.
Your copy to what your actual beliefs are, which is ridiculous, right?
Right. Yeah, well, and honestly, people went so hard in the paint after the thing. I understand the kids. I understand your concerns. I totally get it. We're not even going to talk about that.
Yeah.
We're just looking at, the idea of rebel rabbis participating in some of these more galley-like rituals is not ridiculous.
Yeah, and I'll say this too. None of this, like, people that look at us going, well, aren't you just part of a cult or part of you guys are your own religion because you're just sitting here debating? No, it's not. I'd be living my life the exact same way. I could care less about Christianity. Again, when I say that, I'm not saying screw those people or they're less than me. That's not what I'm saying.
Right.
What I'm saying is that even the Greek stuff, I don't wake up worshiping Artemis. Some people do. Good for you. I don't. It wouldn't change my life either way. Same with Christianity. Same with the Mesoamerican Jaguar gods. It doesn't do anything for me. So that's why I'm not an atheist. That's why I'm not on these websites going, oh my God, the Christian, they're so wrong. I don't care. And I'm not here to save people either.
Yeah.
It is. It's just broken. And it's broken empaths that are like, we're going to save the world. And honestly, I wish people would take the time. If there's one thing you look into this week, if you have the time, whoever's watching, well, go watch Carl Jung talk about empaths, because Jesus was one, a broken healer. And many people that are leaving Christianity are the same thing as they're broken empaths, because they realize I've been lied to my entire life with this crap. And now I'm going to go back and try to save other people. But guess what? You're becoming an empath. You're becoming a broken healer to try to save other people from. But when you do that, you're not saving yourself. And the empathic side that you need to get away from, as Carl Jung talks about, to individuate, isn't to kill that persona, is to integrate that into your life and say, I'm not going to waste my time trying to save all these people. What I'm going to do is learn all the stuff that I can and talk about the ancient historical stuff. I'm going to have my own experiences with these stuff myself, and I will share that with other people. Now, whether other people want to indirectly be motivated from that to do their own things in their own lives, cool. But I'm not here keeping tabs. Don't follow what I say. Follow what you say. Follow your heart. Follow what's for you. And if you want to end up at Christianity and follow that, well, good for you. I would say in that case, if that's what you want to do, I'm not a big fan of the evangelical stuff, and it doesn't go just for Christianity. It goes with all religions. Stop telling people what to do.
Yes.
So before we jump off,
oh, sorry, never mind.
You're fine. We're gonna do plenty. I work a few days this week, but I'm gonna be off a few days too. Before we go, I'm gonna read one thing, and it's not much, but I'm just gonna read what it says in Josephus Antiquities 29:1. There were many wandering prophets and religious figures in Galilee, some of whom caused disturbances. So I really appreciate it, everybody. we're going to go ahead and go take care of all of our adult things for the day, but we'll see you guys soon. Catch you on the